Hey everybody. All right. Good to see you. I've got my red screen behind me again. Look at me. All right. Lots of people in the chat I see this morning. Well, it's morning for me anyway. I see you guys asking what time it is in Vancouver. But yeah, lots of familiar people here. Kayo's here. CF Teaching is back. Zainab. And then some newer people. Well, obviously Rose is there, and then I see some newer people, or Santhos. Hey, welcome. Vivek? Hi. Lots of people, good to see you. If you're new to the class, if this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Shaun, and I'll be your teacher for the next hour or so. Okay, we got people from Istanbul here, Ecuador, Paris. All right, oh yeah, you like my haircut? All right, thanks. Yeah, I got this for you guys. I wanted to look nice for you. I must say, as much as I like my 70-year-old Italian barber, as much as I like his his work, I think he may have gotten a little too excited here with the clippers. I don't know. He was pretty excited, so he took quite a bit off, but that's okay. Yeah, it'll grow back. Oh, I look handsome. Thanks. Thank you very much. All right. So yeah, lots of new people. Srishti from India. Hi, Tevfik. All right. All right. So, greetings from Vancouver, Canada. It's 9 o'clock in the morning for me. I'm still a little bit sleepy, to be honest. It's been a bit of a crazy day. I look younger with my haircut. Okay, that's good. Like a 12-year-old boy, maybe. Yeah. All right. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning here in Vancouver. I'm coming to you from the studio at the Canadian College of English Language here in Vancouver. And it's good to see you. Santhos, you've been watching the class for 6 months. Awesome. Cool. All right. So thanks for joining us. Usually we've got Zach in the chat as the moderator to help you out, but Zach is on vacation this week. Zach is in Cancun, lounging on the beach with a fruity drink in his hand or something with I don't know, mango or something strawberry flavored. I'm not sure, but he's relaxing this week, so I'm all on my own. Well, of course I have you guys. Okay, so that's all I need. Yeah. So if you have questions throughout the class, of course, put them in the chat as usual, and I will try to answer them as quickly as I can, as often as I can, as best as I can. If I miss one of your questions, feel free to put it in the chat again, okay? So, yeah, let's get started. I'm looking forward to it. Today's class is kind of by special request. And I'm willing to do that, guys. If there are certain things that you have problems with, or certain things that you want to learn about, feel free to send a message through Learn English on Facebook, or put a comment under one of our videos in YouTube, right? And we'll try to help you out. So this class is because, yeah, people asked for it, so I'm going to give it to you. All right. So. Before we get into it, let's talk about tests. All right, we're going to lead into the topic here with a little discussion. All right, so tests. Tests are a thing that we all expect in school. Obviously, it's what school is all about, and it's something that people debate about. Maybe we spend too much time on tests in class, right, in school. Because while some people do very well on tests, they use it as a way to prove how good they are, how smart they are, okay? For some people, it is a source of stress. Now, guys, in the chat, make sure you're being respectful to each other in the chat, or we'll just remove you guys, okay? All right, thanks. Okay, so tests, as I said, a source of of great anxiety for many people. And some people think that maybe we put too much focus on tests in school, right? Some people say, well, what is the purpose of the test really? What are tests preparing us for after school? In school, we spend so much time focusing on tests that it sometimes can cause, as I said, stress for students, especially in some countries more than others. Sometimes teachers are forced to teach to the test, meaning they teach you in order to help you pass the test, but how much is that actually helping you? Okay? Thanks, guys. All right. So the question is, or the debate is that some people actually go so far as to think that we spend so much time on tests that they should actually be eliminated. Some people say that written tests should be eliminated entirely from the education system, that tests don't really help you, prepare you for the real world. Because, I mean, it is true that after school, once you're out of school, you're never really going to have to write a test, right? Right, exactly. CF teaching is saying that sometimes they don't show what the student has actually learned. Are they an accurate representation of what the student has learned? So some people say, I'm not saying that I believe this necessarily, but some people say that we should just get rid of tests entirely, okay? That they're just a source of trouble and nothing else. But while it's true that tests are stressful, and it is true that sometimes teachers focus too much on the test, and sometimes students and parents and everybody focuses on the test, getting rid of tests entirely would be tremendously difficult, right? So yes, they're stressful. However, what is the alternative, right? What could we do instead? Rosa's saying we usually forget what we study for tests. Well, that's true too, right? Yeah, you study, write the test, and then forget, right? So some people say, get rid of tests. So all of these are good points, right? So while tests are stressful, while they don't necessarily help you, what could we do instead, right? Now some people say, perhaps, rather than a multiple choice tests, Kaio is saying tests are a cold way to yeah, they're definitely a cold way to evaluate students, absolutely. Fatima's saying oral tests could be, yeah, right? Okay, especially with a language, right? The speaking test or something like that. Yeah. Okay, some good stuff coming in the chat here, good. Now, I mean, some people even say, rather than a written test, some kind of practical use of what you learn in school could be an alternative, right? Making you use it, making you apply what you learn to show that you understand it. Now, while that works in a science class or a math class, perhaps, I mean, it would be harder in some of the arts classes or English literature classes or that kind of stuff too. So there's no easy answer, and honestly, I'm not looking for the answer today. I just chose the topic of test in order to introduce the language that we're going to be focusing on today, which is contrast and concession. Rose is saying, but we can test a writing skill through oral tests. Okay, interesting. Some good stuff coming up here in the chat, guys. This is nice. All right, so today's lesson is about contrast and concession, clauses and linking devices that we use to express contrast and concession. And the whole point of me talking about tests, can't, Rosa, yeah, I understand that now. The whole point of my talk about tests is just to use some of this language that we're going to be focusing on today. Okay, so let's dive into it. Forget about tests for now. This is not a test. This is just practice, right? Let's learn some stuff and apply it, okay? Not through a test. So, contrast and concession. In order to fully understand what we're talking about today, let's look at two sentences and discuss kind of how they are different, okay? Marianne's here. Hi, Marianne. All right, so look at these two sentences. The first one is, Western Canada is quite mountainous. However, the prairie provinces are very flat. All right, followed by, I know you are right. However, I think you should apologize to her. Okay, so the language that we're going to be focusing on in today's class is, for example, words like however. Now, two sentences have the same structure, the same word, the same linking word in the middle, but the use of the word however is a little bit different in these two sentences. The meaning, the reason we're using this word however, what we're expressing with however, is not exactly the same in both of these sentences. What is the difference, right? What's the difference between these two sentences? Well, let's talk about it, okay? So the first one is a simple contrast, okay? The second one is something that we call concession. Now, one of the things we're going to be focusing on today right now is the difference between these two. And the first one, simple contrast, is something that we have talked about in previous classes. Today, we're going to be focusing on this idea of concession. Kayo's saying, can we say apologize her instead of apologize to her? No, you need that to in there, right? You need some kind of preposition there, Kayo. Apologize to her is definitely what you need there. Okay. All right, so Western Canada, let's look at this first sentence again. Yeah, these are compound sentences, you're right, but they have a slightly different use of that word, however. Now the first one, Western Canada is quite mountainous. However, the prairie provinces are very flat. This is what we call, as I said, a simple contrast. This is when you use the word however to look at two things, or two people, or two ideas, and discuss how they are different. It's a comparison, right? You're looking at, in this case, Western Canada, one part of a country, and the prairie provinces, which are in the middle of Canada, kind of in the center, slightly west of center. Okay, so you're comparing two different regions of a country and showing how they are different from one another. That is a simple contrast. Okay? Is anyone, Mustafa wants to know, is anyone from Iran? Mustafa, are you from Iran? Yeah? Okay, so linking devices for simple contrast. This is something we have done in another class on comparison contrast, right? All of these words like but, however, in contrast, while, and unlike, we use these to express how one thing is different from another thing, right? So just to be clear, let's look at an example of simple contrast, okay? Because again, this is not the focus of today's class, but we need to talk about the differences. CF teaching, using some concession there, that's a good one. All right, so while sales dropped significantly in January, they began to increase again in March, or by March, I said, okay? So again, this is a simple contrast because you are comparing sales in one month, January, with sales in another month, and they're different. And you're using the word while to show the difference, okay? And yeah, some of you guys are getting ahead of me. You're talking about contradict. That's exactly right. Good, so again, this is simple contrast. So how is this different from our focus today? Today we're looking at contrast and concession, all right? Now, some of you are putting your answers in the chat already, which is good. We're going to start out with some of the basics today, and then later in class, hopefully, I'll get to show you something new, all right? Challenge you guys a little bit. So I know you were right, however, I think you should apologize to her. Now this, in this sentence, these two clauses seem to contradict, is the word that Kayo is using. They seem to be the opposite of one another. They're against each other, okay? Therefore, it's surprising that they are both true, okay? Two things that are true, but they are against one another. And this idea is what we call concession, this kind of surprising contrast, this kind of yes, but type sentence, right? Concession is a little unexpected, Navjot says. That's exactly right. Because these two things, I know you're right. You are right, you should apologize. Well, why should you apologize if you were right? Yeah? But these kinds of sentences pop up in our language all the time. And honestly, I know I think I labeled this as a writing lesson, but some of this stuff you could definitely apply to your speech as well. You could definitely say this kind of stuff in a conversation, all right? Especially with, I don't know, a friend or something. It looks like you would say this kind of sentence. So a surprising contrast, unexpected contrast is what we call concession. Yes, but, okay? And this is what we're going to focus on today. Now these are linking devices that we would use to express concession, this kind of unexpected contrast, right? And I've got even so is just behind my fresh haircut there, right? Okay, so the word so is right behind me. So you got words like although, though, even though, while, despite, in spite of, however, nevertheless, and even so. All right, now you'll notice, first off, that while and however were in both lists, because these two words are very useful, very versatile, right? You can use while and however to express a simple contrast, right? Like, I am an English teacher, however, my brother is a science teacher. Simple contrast, right? Because that's not unexpected. There's no reason why he should be an English teacher just because I am, right? Vivek says, I love her, however, I don't like to date her. Okay. I'm tired, however, I will finish this task. This is concession. This is really good, guys. All right. So while and however are very useful for both simple contrast and concession. The other ones we use for concession. Therefore, however is kind of more useful than a word like nevertheless. You're going to be able to use however more often than nevertheless. Okay? Now let's look at an example of concession. Then we'll look at kind of sentence structure, and then you guys will get to work for me, okay? So while sales dropped significantly in January, it's kind of the same idea that we looked at before. While sales dropped significantly in January, they decided not to change their strategy for the following months. Now in this sentence, these two clauses are opposing one another, as I said. Right? It's not a simple contrast. The difference is if the sales went down, you would expect a company to consider changing their strategy, right? Good question, CF Teaching. I'll get to that in a second, okay? Good one. So you would expect sales go down, they're going to do something about it. But in this case, they're saying they did nothing. Sales went down, but they decided not to change their strategy. So this is unexpected, right? Opposing things that are both true, and therefore concession. Now CF Teaching is asking if nevertheless is formal. I would say nevertheless is probably used in more formal situations than some of the other words, but you can still use it in speech. Yeah, it's definitely not too formal to use in conversational English, but it's definitely used, I think, more often in formal language. Good. Good, good, good. Okay, let me show you one more, because this is why we're talking about tests today, right? Though tests often place unnecessary stress on students, right? Testing cannot be eliminated from school altogether, right? Where you're saying yes, but. And this type of sentence, the reason maybe I'll put my finger, sorry to point at you like that. This sentence, the reason I call this a writing lesson is because this type of sentence is very useful in an essay, right? This kind of yes, but, when you're trying to persuade someone or give your opinion and defend your opinion, right? You're saying, yes, tests are stressful, but they cannot be eliminated. We need tests, unfortunately. Okay, now in this sentence, the word though is expressing the concession, right? And it comes with the first clause in this case, but we can move them around. All right? Now Rose is saying use a semicolon before however. Yeah, right. Oh yeah, you're talking to Kaio there. Yeah, Kaio, I arrived early, semicolon, however. Now that's great, Rosa. That's an excellent introduction, because I want to talk about that. that while all of these words express concession, this unexpected contrast, right? These words and these words and these ones are slightly different grammatically speaking, right? Therefore, you have to be careful how you write your sentences, because you have to follow slightly different rules for sentence structure. Kaio, there you go. Good. You just need a period at the end there now. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's look at how these sentences, or rather these words or phrases, differ grammatically. So let me go into my notes here. How about this? Let's see what you guys know first, okay? I'm going to leave this here. We've got two sentences. Tuition is rising. Tuition meaning money for school, for university. Enrollment continues to increase. So enrollment is the number of students entering the school. So tuition, the money is going up. The number of students are going up. These two ideas seem to be opposing one another, right? So I want you to put those two sentences together in one sentence. But I want you to try to do it 3 different ways, okay? I want you to try to connect these two ideas into one sentence, but 3 times. I want one sentence with although, one with nevertheless, and one with despite. And maybe even what I'll do here is I'll number them, okay? So I'm going to pop off the screen for about 30 seconds to a minute, okay? And I want you guys to try to connect these two sentences 3 different ways, and then we'll look at the difference in structure, and then you guys are going to do some more work for me, okay? So I've been talking too much. I'm going to disappear. Connect these two sentences 3 ways, okay? Go for it, guys. All right, good stuff. Good, good, good. CF Teaching is saying, though and although can be applied interchangeably, right? Yes, they can be, but there is a slight difference with though CF teaching, and that's a good question. I'll talk about that in a minute too. Okay, good one. So lots of good answers coming in. Let's go over here, and I'll put some answers up on the screen. So taking these two sentences, how about let me copy these. There we go. All right. So the first one, although. Okay, now Astha says, although tuition is rising, enrollment continues to increase. Yeah, and I think that's the typical answer that I got from most people. That was good. Yeah, Kaio got it. Yeah, Sebas got it. Good. Lots of good answers coming in. Okay, and you're absolutely right. So with the first one, although tuition is rising, enrollment continues to increase. Okay, so let's take that out of there. We don't even need that there. Okay. So this first one, although tuition is rising, the only thing you have to look out for in this sentence is make sure that you've got that comma there, because you've got, in this sentence, dependent clause and main clause, right? We've got a lesson on complex sentences out there that would be good if you're not sure what we're talking about here. But remember that if you start the sentence with your dependent clause, with your clause of concession, with although, while, even though, or though, you want to put a comma afterwards here. Okay. Good. Good stuff. All right. So that's the complex sentence. Now, nevertheless, very similar meaning, this concession, this unexpected contrast, but a slightly different use, because nevertheless is an adverb. Okay, so tuition is rising, and we're going to go to, I think, what Rosa was saying to Kaio before. You need that semicolon. Well, I put however, getting too excited. Nevertheless. All right, so in this case, for the compound sentence, you would do that one. Okay, so this is complex, this is compound. Tuition is rising, nevertheless, enrollment continues to increase. Because it's important when you're making these sentences of concession to decide what is the surprising, unexpected part, right? I would say that this part is unexpected, right? You think if the money goes up, you think fewer students would take the classes, right? They would do something else. But despite that, the numbers are still going up. And I almost said the answer to the last one, but I just stopped myself, because this last one with despite, this is the word that sometimes gives students the most trouble. And I think maybe we've talked about this in class before. Despite is not a conjunction like although, and it is not an adverb like nevertheless. Despite is a preposition. Okay, a preposition means, because it's a preposition, it cannot be followed by a clause like this. So if you said, for example, despite tuition is rising, that is incorrect. You can't say that, because despite is not a conjunction. Okay, although works there, but despite doesn't. So how are you going to do it? Now, some of you, I would say, yeah, I got a little lazy, took the lazy route, and that's fine. And you said, despite the fact that tuition is rising. There's nothing wrong with this sentence. That's perfectly fine if you said, despite the fact that tuition is rising. Claudine is saying, to use a sentence after despite, we must use the phrase the fact that. Not entirely true. That's pretty good. You can do it like this, but you don't have to. In fact, this one, despite the fact that, it's okay, but if you want to show your range of language, you want to show how good your English is, you should try using despite without that, just to just to see what you can do. Now Rosa's saying, despite the rising of tuition. No, you're really close. Luciano's here, hey. So you've got lots of stuff coming in here. So Shubham said, despite tuition is rising. So we already said you can't say that. Michelle Brown, despite tuition rising, oh, you're real close. All right, anybody has it? Does anybody have it? Despite the rising of tuition is what Zainab said. That's pretty good. Now, as I said, in this sentence, it's okay. But how about this? Despite, take this, move it over here. Get fancy. Let's get fancy. Let's get cute. Despite rising tuition, enrollment continues to increase. Mwah, look at that sentence. What a magical thing. What a wonderful thing I've just done here. All right? This sentence is even more beautiful than my haircut. Okay? So I wouldn't say despite of. You could say in spite of rising tuition. Okay? But in this case, despite rising tuition, you've created a prepositional phrase with a preposition, right? Preposition. In this case, this is now an adjective, and you've got a noun here. Okay? So preposition, noun is a phrase, and now it's perfecto. Yeah, saying Al Dorian is saying the same thing. Despite. Now, I wouldn't say this. Good questions, guys. Despite of, don't do that, because despite is a preposition. Of is a preposition. So don't put two prepositions together like that. But you could do this. In spite of rising tuition. That would be good. Steve Lynn, you like mine? Right, despite rising tuition? Good. I aim to please. Yeah, that makes me happy to get your guys' approval. So despite rising tuition. So that's the difference between these sentences, okay, and these different linking devices. So just watch out for those mistakes, okay? Now, CF Teaching asked a good question about although and though, and whether or not they are interchangeable, and they are. You could, in that first sentence, say, though tuition is rising, enrollment continues to increase. That's fine. It's perfect. However, it's also important to know that though can also function as an adverb as well, and we often put it at the end of a sentence. Okay? Yes, CF Teaching, despite tuition rise. I'll get back to that one in a second. Okay, so if you look at this second sentence, tuition is rising. Keep a semicolon there. Enrollment continues to increase, though. Okay, native English speakers, we often put the word though at the end of our sentence, right? I go to this cafe every day. I don't really like the coffee though, right? It's kind of a strange, I don't know why I go to the cafe then. I'm a good student, but my grades aren't always good though. Exactly, perfect. Good. So in this case, though is an adverb, okay? In this first sentence, though is a conjunction. Now, don't worry too much about the terminology. As long as you know how to use it, it's perfect. Okay, now somebody's asking about even though is fine. Even, we talked about in a previous class about it's just being an emphasizing word, right? A word that we use to add some punch to our sentences. That's good. And there was another one too. What was the other question? Oh yeah, right. Someone was asking about this. Despite, you could also say this. Despite the rise in tuition, or the rise of tuition. Despite the rise of or in tuition, enrollment continues to increase. So you've got so many different choices, so many possibilities when it comes to expressing concession, right? So, as I always say in this class, show your range, right? Use a variety. Selma's asking, is it correct to end a sentence with a preposition? Well, that's a good question. That's really that question of ending a sentence with a preposition is about traditional grammatical rules versus everyday common use of the language. Now, according to really strict rules, Selma, the rule is you shouldn't finish a sentence with a preposition, because prepositions by definition should come before, right? Preposition. Technically though, when it comes to everyday use of the language, we end sentences with prepositions all the time. Okay? So it's a big difference between, that's the thing about language. Textbook grammatical rules will get you so far, but everyday common use of the language may be a little bit more important, really. All right, yeah, everybody does it, exactly. Okay, so how about this? I'm going to get you guys to do a little bit more work here. Now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to see if I can put a link in the chat. Hopefully I can. If not, oh yeah, there we go. So I just put a link to this exercise. So you can follow that link, or you can just look on the screen. I'm going to leave the screen up here, and I would like you guys to take what we've just talked about and apply it, right? I want you to show me that you can take a sentence with one kind of linking device expressing concession and rewrite it with another one. Okay? Language is changing, Steve says, absolutely, all the time. So what you have are 5 sentences. Each one is concession, right? You got although, while, in spite of, and so on. I want you to try to take this word and rewrite this sentence. Okay, so the first one, let's do together as one big happy family here. Okay, so although he had the qualifications, he was not hired for the position. So based on what we just said about despite, I would say this. I'm going to get fancy. Despite his qualifications, he was not hired for the position. Okay? So that's the answer for the first one. That's a nice, beautiful sentences. Yeah, Rosa got it, despite the qualifications. Despite being qualified, Navjot said. That's also perfecto. Okay? Let me pop out of the screen for a bit, get you guys to do some work for a couple minutes, 2 minutes or so. Try to do these 4 sentences here, and then I'll come back. All right? Get to work, and if you have questions, put them in the chat. All right. Good, good, good. So many answers in the chat. Good to see. Okay, so the first one we did together already, right? We said, despite his qualifications. Yeah. And then continue. I can do that. I can be lazy. You guys can't. You have to write the sentence. Okay? So, despite his qualifications, although I think it was Navjot before said despite being qualified. Really nice. Okay? Now look at the next one, B. While I'm not particularly interested in fantasy novels or movies, I thoroughly enjoy Game of Thrones. Now that's autobiography right there. I don't really care about dragons and kings and queens and whatnot, but yeah, Game of Thrones is a good show, regardless. Nevertheless, right? So in this case, even so is what I'm looking for. And now, Kaio, I'm going to pick on you because that's a great mistake. Okay, now what you did is you put even so up here, right? Even so, I'm not particularly interested in. Now that doesn't quite work because so, in this case, even so is not what we would call a subordinating conjunction, right? What you mean there is even though, right? Even though I'm not particularly interested. Now, what did I have in there before? Although? While, I think, was my original sentence. Now what you have to do here is use even so the same way that you would use however. Whoops. There we go. And I would say I'm not particularly interested in fantasy novels or movies. And some of you guys got that. You said semicolon. Yeah, Rosa got that. Who else got that? Let me give a shout out. Steve Lynn nailed it, right? So some of you put that semicolon and then said, even so, I thoroughly enjoy Game of Thrones. Now the one thing you have to be careful of, and Steve got it, is make sure you put that comma there, right? You want that phrase between the semicolon and the comma, okay? Just like you would say, however or nevertheless. All right? Good stuff. Kaio got confused. That's okay. I get confused all the time. I'm a little confused right now, right? I hope I'm hiding it well. Right. Okay. So Vivek is saying even I got that. Maybe you were talking about the first one. I'm not sure. So C, in spite of the fact that we were often broke as university students, we always had a good time. Now, in this sentence, the word broke, obviously slang meaning CFTs. No, I don't. No, I don't look confused. Okay, maybe just then I looked confused. All right, broke means no money, right? You don't have money. All right, so we didn't have money, but what would we say? Now you guys got it. We said we were often broke as students. I'm going to get a little lazy. Semicolon. Nevertheless, comma, we always had a good time. Yeah, I mean, that's part of being a student is being poor, right? What's the fun of being a student with money? All right. So that's good. And some of you guys nailed that one, I think. Who got that one? Let me give a little shout out to that. Michelle, you got it? Yep, good. Just make sure you got that comma there. Okay? Good, good, good. All right, Guadalupe is late. That's okay. We've got about 15, 20 minutes or so. Better late than never. All right, 2 more here, gang. All right. What are you guys talking about in the past tense? Maybe you're talking about D. So he has a very relaxed teaching style, but he manages to keep his students engaged and active. I wonder who that is. I wonder who that's talking about. Okay. So you guys got that one too. Now Zainab, you have to be careful with that, because when you said in spite of he has, can't do that, because in spite of. This preposition here, you have to follow it with a noun or a phrase, right? So you have to be careful. It's the same as despite, but that's a good mistake. Astha. Astha? Am I saying your name correctly? Yeah? You got it. You said in spite of having. You said in spite of having a relaxed teaching style. That's good. You could also say this. In spite of his relaxed teaching style, he manages. And then I'm going to get lazy there. Now, in this sentence, make sure that when you put in spite of here, that you remove but. You can't have two contrasting words together. That's a common mistake that students have. Zara is saying, I didn't understand how we use despite. Could you please explain it again? Yeah, sure. Just remember that despite is a preposition. So it's like all of the other words, but you can't follow it with a subject and a verb. It can't be a clause after despite, okay? So you can only follow it with a noun or a phrase. So despite his qualifications, or in this case, despite complaints, right? Despite is the preposition, complaints is your noun. And the same thing here, in spite of his teaching style. You've got some adjectives there, and then you've got your noun, but there's no verb there, really. That's the thing that's missing is a verb, okay? Now Vivek, yeah, exactly what I said there, just make sure you take that but out. You can't put but here and have two contrasting words in a sentence. That doesn't work. One or the other. Yeah, no, I get confused sometimes, all the time. All right. Now, the last one, despite the customer complaints. Now, Zara, maybe this will explain it to you a little bit. You notice here we've got the phrase, no verb, right? Despite customer complaints is your noun. Now, if you're using even though, you can't say the customer complaints. You have to say the customers complained. Right? Now, you've got the verb there, even though customers complained. Okay? And then the company, did not improve its service. Bad idea for that company. Cohen is saying, today is rain in spite of I go out hiking. Almost. Cohen, you got to switch that around and say, I'm going hiking in spite of the rain. Good one. Okay. Now, we don't have a ton of time, but that's okay. We do have time for me to show you. I want to show you something, maybe, hopefully, something new, right? Because a lot of these words, I'm sure that you've seen before in your English classes, although and while, however. But there are so many other ways of expressing concession that sometimes we don't focus on enough in language schools, right? Or in classes, I should say. So let's talk about some other natural ways that we show concession in English. You're hoping for a mistake of the week? I'll try to get there, Selma. I'll try to get there. Okay? So other expressions that we use. And in this section, we're actually looking at stuff that's really common in speech. Okay? The first one is using the word as to express concession. Michelle is saying he manages to keep his students active and engaged in spite of his relaxed teaching style. Michelle, yes, but no semicolon there. Okay? Get that semicolon out of there, and you'll be good. And we're saying why complained and not complaints? Because with the word though, you need a verb. Kaio's asking for mistake of the week. We'll get there, I promise. I won't. Okay? Just relax. I want to teach you something. Okay? Then we'll get to the mistake of the week. As. Check out these sentences. especially in the world of sports, some of you will be able to feel the pain here, okay? As much as I love my team, they are absolutely awful this year, okay? As much as I love my team. Now in this sentence, as much as isn't a comparison. Really, it's a concession. It means although, all right? Now you might also see it without that first as. Some people might say, much as I love my team, they are absolutely awful this year. I think I would put both as in there. Steve is asking a question. I'll try to get back to that one. Okay, Steve? So as much as I love my team, they're absolutely awful this year. I don't know if that's true for anybody watching today, right? But it means although I love my team, they're awful. I have to admit it. Yes, I love them, but they're just terrible. Okay? So we use as in this case. Valerie comes, we won't have any chance. All right. So let's look at another example. As much as. This guy. All right. As much as I dislike that guy, he makes our company a lot of money. So maybe I guess you're talking about a coworker and you're saying, yeah, I don't like him very much. He's not a nice guy, although this guy seems okay. He's not a nice guy, but he makes us a lot of money, so let's keep him, right? So again, in this case, as much as means although or while I dislike him, he makes us money, so let's keep him, right? So that's that. It looks like a comparison, but it's not. It's concession. And how about one more? Yeah, even though is the same, right? As smart as he is, he couldn't pass the final exam. Now, again, in this sentence, we're using as with an adjective, as a concession. Even though he is smart, he couldn't pass the exam, right? As stressful as they are, tests are necessary in school. Yeah? So in this case, you have me as much as possible. Good sentence, but not exactly the same meaning. In this case, this is contrast, right? Yes, he is smart, but he couldn't pass the exam. All right? One more, which I really like. We use this in speech all the time. Having said that, okay, let me show you an example. I believe our education system is too focused on tests. Okay, I believe that. Having said that, I'm not sure what the alternatives are. So in this sentence, having said that means however. Okay, I believe our education system is too focused on tests. Yes. However, I don't know what to do without tests. Okay, so we use that expression a lot. I say one thing, but then I say, having said that, this is how I also feel. Concession. Steve, yeah, don't apologize. You can ask whatever questions you want, and I'll try to answer them. Never apologize for asking me a question. Well, I guess it depends on what the question is. Yeah. Okay. Having said that, be careful maybe sometimes what you ask me. And sometimes we shorten it up and say, that said. Okay. We focus too much on tests. That said, I don't know what the alternatives are. Yes, a great deal of possibilities, so many different ways to express concession. Okay? So just to make sure we have enough time for everything, because I know everybody will be very angry at me if we don't do the mistake of the week. This is what we're going to do. Okay? I'm going to say that this next part we're not going to do in class today. You can do that on your own. If you have questions, you can ask on Facebook, right? I've given you 5 sentences, and I wanted you to try to add something to it to make it a concession. Okay? So, what are you saying over there? Having said that and that said. Yeah, thumbs up? Not angry, just disappointed. Yeah, right. You sound like a parent. That's what I say to my kids. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Yeah, you're turning it back on me. All right, so number 1, for example, says, studying art in school will probably not get you a job. Okay, it's the truth. It's of all the people that study art in school, most of them will not get a job from studying art. Okay? If you disagree with me, we can have an argument in the chat. That's fine. That said, art in school is extremely valuable because it helps young people develop their creativity. Okay? So there, look at me. I just conceded and contrasted this idea, right? Because I love art, but yeah, you're probably not. It's the chances of making a living with art are small. However, it is possible. Some people do it, right? So be optimistic. Okay. So add something to this sentence and make it a concession. Yeah. As much as I love my city, for example, Vancouver, as much as I love my city, it is very expensive to live in Vancouver. Well, to buy a house in Vancouver is very expensive. Little things, not so much, right? Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so do that on your own time. Stick around after class and do that, unless it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're going to bed, all right? But we do have time, of course, for the mistake of the week. Mistake of the week. As most of you know, if you've been here before, I'm going to put a sentence up here, and you guys look at it and find me the mistake as fast as you can. Okay? Whoever gets it first is the winner, is the best person in the universe, right? It's my favorite student in the universe if you get it first. So this one, I'm even going to give a little bit of a hint, maybe. I don't know if it's a hint. This one is specifically for, I think, speakers of Spanish. This is a mistake that Spanish speakers make. Maybe Portuguese. French, I'm not sure, actually. Maybe French. Possibly French, okay? So this is it, the mistake of the week. Can you find it? I'm going to pop out for 10 seconds, find me the mistake, and then we'll go over it together. Okay? Here it is. There's your sentence. Find me the mistake. I'm out of here. Oh my, you guys. Oh, Mark talks about this mistake? You guys you're too fast for me. I've got to come up with something more challenging for you guys next week. Next week, I'm going to get you. I'm going to trick you next time, all right, if it's the last thing I do. So lots of answers came in. Who was the very first to get it? Guadalupe de la Caridad. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. I hope I am. Guadalupe, and you are absolutely correct to find the mistake. And this is, as I said, this is a mistake that's very, very common among people who speak Spanish. I hear that with Spanish-speaking students. Other languages, I don't know. Portuguese, maybe, as I said. The French, perhaps. Yeah. Because the problem in this sentence is, oh yeah, you used to make that mistake, of course, and that's great. That's how we learn. So I am agree, a very common mistake. All right. Now it's one of those mistakes that when you see it written down, it kind of jumps out as obvious. But it is a very common mistake, nevertheless. All right. Aha. Concession. So the problem is, I think, in some languages, Spanish definitely, I think agree is an adjective, perhaps. The word, whatever the word is for agree, maybe that's an adjective. But in English, it isn't. It's a verb, right? So you got to get that am out of there and say I agree, right? Subject and verb. Okay, I agree with his views on education. Cool. So that was a quick one, but nice one. Yeah, you've seen that mistake in Mark's class? Yeah, because it's a common one, yeah. Steve is saying prepositions following agree are also confusing. Sure. You're talking about like agree with? Yeah, I mean agree with someone is I think the most common. You can agree on an idea, right? As well. In Arabic, it's a verb. Okay, lucky. Yeah, okay, good for you guys. So you probably don't make that mistake. You have your own special mistakes as Arabic speakers as well. Because obviously, people that speak different languages will make different mistakes, right? People that speak the same language will make very similar mistakes. All right. So I'm having a good time. That said, it's time for me to say goodbye, sadly. All right, because it's another hour is up. I know it's always sad. Let me go back to the bright red screen. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm not sold on this red. However, I'll give it some time. I just can't stop conceding. Yeah. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the class. I've enjoyed teaching it. I always enjoy popping in here on Thursday mornings. Thursday morning, 9 o'clock Vancouver time. Vancouver is Pacific Standard Time. I know that it's very late where some of you guys are, and I appreciate you staying up just for me, because as I've said before, I know that on Wednesdays and Tuesdays, you guys are in bed at 10 o'clock at night, all tucked in and ready for the next day, but on class day with me, you stay up super late. All right. So thanks. Thanks for coming. Guadalupe, it's your birthday? Yeah, it's too early in the morning for me to be singing, but I will definitely wish you a happy birthday to you. It's your birthday, and you're the fastest student on the internet. Okay. So enjoy your special day, or the rest of it. I'm not sure what time it is where you are now. All right. So, yeah, Valerie. So yeah, you're a little late, Valerie, but that's okay. Okay. So we'll see you next time. Between now and next week, you can obviously keep watching the other classes. We've got Mark, Neil, Nicole, Josh, all teaching classes. In those classes, you have the option of becoming a premium user, and you get some advantages, some benefits from that. I put a link in there. If you guys have questions about that, you can follow the link to our website for more info. I'll be here next week. And keep practicing your English. Keep visiting us on Learn English on Facebook is the group. Check out the videos on YouTube. Like us, love us, react to us on Facebook. Tell your friends, tell your family, and we'll see you next time, guys. All right? Until then, see you later.